Hello everyone, welcome to another video. You're probably wondering, where am I right now? I'm not in my chair. I could be over here, or over here, or right there in the corner, or under my desk per se. You don't know where I could be. I've done that before. I've been under my desk before. Anyway, today's gonna be a weird video. That's why I'm starting off the intro very weird. Because we're going back into the freakish nightmare known as Kago. I've covered two of his manga before. One, I made a whole video about the fact that I couldn't finish it, and two, which was one of the first videos I actually recorded, was pretty good. But today, we're getting into a manga known as Brain Damage. I don't know anything about this manga, and I honestly don't even know what to expect from this manga. Because it's Kago, for God's sake. Like, this man can come up with some of the most outlandish things known to man, really. But with that being said, let's get into it. Oh God. Hi. Oh Jesus, this was a terrible idea. I don't know how I got into there, honestly. It was weird. Anyway, let's get into this video. Yeah, there's some crazy imagery in this, okay? So you have been warned. You feel free to leave the video, subscribe first, then leave the video, and maybe when you're older, come back. Anyway, just wanted to warn. First story, for Labyrinth Quartet. We begin the weirdness with a girl waking up in a room, seemingly not knowing anything. There are three girls in the room with her. They all look alike, and they all very quickly start to argue with one another about who's real, what's going on. One of them assumes that it's an experiment about cloning, but that seemingly can't be because they all have different names with completely different backstories. Their names are Kuroda, Kana, Ichinos, and Akazumi. Now, I want to say this right now. This gets very confusing very fast, so knowing their names really isn't all that important with this. Because again, they all look alike, so how the hell am I going to tell them apart? One of them seems to think that those names are planted memories. They then get into what they last remember. Kana says that she is a sophomore in high school. And on her way to practice, Kuroda says that she dropped out of high school and was on her way home from work. Ichino said that she works for a modeling agency and remembers going to her apartment after work. Akazuma said that she remembers shopping after college. Someone then suggested they were drugged and kidnapped, but that doesn't necessarily explain why they all have the same faces. So it could be cloning. But again, that can't really necessarily be the case because they're all different heights and their moles are all in different places. One of them tries to leave, but the door is old, so they find a paperclip and they use the paperclip to escape. Some of them don't think that it's a good idea to leave because the person that has them there is probably on the other side of the door, but the one that's unlocking the door doesn't necessarily care. When they open the door, it's a hallway with two rooms, and it looks like that it goes around in a circle. They run around it for a bit till they realize that there's another room. So they open the door to that room and they're greeted with four dead bodies of four different girls that look exactly like them. What? First things first. If I'm seeing that and I know that there's no way to escape, what else is there to do? I mean, I'm thinking of an option that I'm not going to say because it's YouTube. With this site, one of them runs away and runs around the corner. They tell her to wait up because she has no idea where she is going. But she turns the corner and it's too late. The others come around the corner and they see her on the floor. A guy with a mask comes up and picks her up by her hair and cuts her head off. The one watching falls to the ground and can't move due to fear. The guy comes and charges at her, but he stops for a second, grabs a piece of paper, looks at it, and then kills her by stabbing her in the stomach. That was a little humorous, okay? That's a little bit of twisted humor right there. The other two then run, and they're running for a little bit longer till they come across four tunnels in a wall. One of them decides to get in, and the further she goes in, the smaller and smaller the tunnel gets. She reaches the other end, and she can barely get out. Then she sees that the door in that room opens, and it's the dude with the mask. He sees her and charges at her again, but again, like the last one, stops and looks at the paper. Then he goes for her. But before he can even get to her, the other girl pulls her back out, and then they start running again till they come across another room with more dead bodies in it. They want to lose them, so they block the door with a table that they found, but that's not enough. So they grab the dead bodies, put it on the table. They then point out that all of them look alike and figure that there's definitely a reason why they are all here. They then turn around to see a stack of books in a corner. They look around for a bit, then they find a high school yearbook with one of them in it. The other one finds photos of her when she was at her model agency job. Then they end up finding an investigation report called Same Face, Same Body. They then find a journal with a sentence saying, "What can I do to stop this feeling? Day after day, I can't get anything done. My appetite only increases. I can't take my eyes off her. I can't take my eyes off her face. Her hairstyle is perfect. I want to become one with her. I want to travel with her. I want to go out to dinner with her. I want to always be with her. Of course, it happens when I'm sleeping. I need to take a break to temporarily forget." They then see photos of the four of them with writing on it and where he found them and his thoughts about them. One of them continues to read the journal, and it says, "I can't quit my feelings for her, so I'll find someone similar to satisfy my desire." One of them calls him insane, and the other one says he's killed four already. That satisfied him for a while. The other girl says, so he's obsessed with people that look like us. We then get a shot of a wall with the four tunnels. They look nice and bright, but then they look dark, as if it's getting night outside. They then see that there's no escape, and they're probably gonna get killed there. But one of them says, "No, he ain't killing me. He's not killing me. I'm gonna be in here." You know what? I mess with that mindset. I don't know who you are. I don't know which one you are. You could be Itchy Nose. I don't know why the heck your name is Itchy Nose. You know, because it kind of sounds like itchy nose, like itchy, like your nose is whatever. One of the girls end up finding weapons to protect themselves with. But then someone ends up breaking through the door, and then they attack them with a blade and they cut their hand. But it turned out to be the same girl that seemingly got stabbed in the stomach earlier. They let her in and then they asked her if she was okay. Then they close the door and slam the table back against the door. But then the girl says, "You can't get out." Then she stabs them in the back. You were just double crossed. Plot twist, she's the actual killer. Who is that man? I don't know who that man is. They don't explain who that man is. I mean, for all we know, it could be their dad or whatever. She then says, "When you found my tools, I figured you knew. Finding girls with the same face isn't as easy as it looks." She then looks at the girl that's on the ground and stabs her. "Thank you for providing the third body, and you'll be perfect as Michiko's head." What do you mean by Michiko's head? I'm pretty sure I'm butchering the hell out of that name. What do you mean by that? "We're finally done," she says. "Michigo and however you pronounce that name, whoever's watching this, this was a complete 180 from where I thought that this story was gonna go. So, brace yourself. This whole time, the killer, who was one of the girls that was hiding amongst them, was killing these girls that look exactly like her because she wanted to make a romance manga or comic. Crazy, isn't it? Like, how do you come up with this stuff? That was the last thing on my mind. Like, I was kind of thinking of like, oh, it's gonna be one of those situations where like, oh, they're trapped and there's a killer that just wants to kill them for pleasure and because he's weird and all of that. I was not expecting one I wasn't expecting it to be the girl that were the killer, but I also wasn't expecting the fact that she's doing this to make a comic out of real life people when she could have literally just asked anyone else if they wanted to be a part of it and they probably agree. Like, what? Does she not have friends? She then leaves the body to bleed out. Later, she takes the bodies that she has accumulated over this story and places them in the holes in the walls, posing them in specific ways to act out a comic. And I'm gonna read the comic to you guys, because what YouTuber would I be without doing that? The comic says, "Wait, Shigimi, can we try again? It's my fault. Michiko, I love you. I love you too." And that's how the story ends. That's how it ends. We get no explanation. We get no backstory for the killer. That's how the story ends. I have so many words to say about this. I'll leave it for the end of the video. Like I said in the beginning of this video, This is gonna be weird. And the next story is weirder, in my opinion. So, yeah, let's get into that now. Story number 2, Cursed Room. Kago starts off this story already on some freak stuff by showing a woman in a shower naked that I will not be showing because it's YouTube. But pretty much what happens is that she notices something and she turns around, but it turned out to be nothing. She then sees a piece of hair on the ground and she notices that it's not hers. She then proceeds to exit the shower with a towel on and notices that her refrigerator is open. She then closes it and says, "Did I forget to close this?" She sees her phone on the table and sees that there are a lot of missed calls. We then cut to her at a desk doing some work. We then see that she has a friend with her. The friend says, "You shouldn't open attachments from unknown senders. It could have a virus." The girl agrees and then she grabs her phone to listen to a voice message. She can't make out what the voice message says. The friend says it could be a prank. The girl then states that she tried sending a selfie of herself to her boyfriend, but it turned out weird. The friend says that she has a classmate that can probably look over this for her. It's now 4:44, very specific number. She wakes up in a sweat. The TV is on, so she turns it off. It's now the next day and she's talking to her friend. We also find out that the main character's name is Chinitsu. The friend then talks to her about her phone and what her classmate found out. There's a hidden message in the voicemail. I don't know a lick of Buddhist at all, so I'm not even gonna waste my time. If you know how to read it, here it is. They also find that the image that she was sent was of a graveyard. Shinichi thinks that she's cursed because she woke up in the middle of the night, paralyzed, and felt like there was something crushing in her chest. Her friend says that she knows a spiritualist that they should go see. The spiritualist, whose name is Oyamada, shows up in her apartment and pretty much says, "Yeah, your place is cursed and you should take precaution immediately." We then see Chinitsu waking up at 4:44 a.m. Her TV screen says tomorrow's dead. She then proceeds to take a shower and finds more hair. Later on, her friend tells her that there's something wrong with your room. And apparently, the person that lived there before she moved in killed themselves. Then the person before them disappeared, and the person for them fell out of the window of the apartment building. Shinichi tries to say something, but she wakes up at 4:44 a.m., sweating and panicked. She turns to look at the TV. It says tomorrow's dead, and then appears her name along with 2 others. And it shows what age they're supposedly going to die. Shinichi is talking to her friend again. Shinichi says, "I'm doomed. I'm cursed by an evil spirit that will kill me." We then see that the friend is smiling. Okay, it's a little odd. Why are you smiling? Are you behind all this? Are you the reason why that she's cursed? I already know what happens in the story because I wrote it down. That's how I know what's happening. I'm not gonna say what's gonna happen, okay? Obviously. But as a viewer, I want you to just sit and think. What can possibly be the rest of this story? I'll give you a second. You done? Did you think of it? Okay, I'm pretty sure what you thought about was completely wrong. The friend then proceeds to have an entire monologue in her head. And she says, "Good girl. The more you suffer and fret, the more you have despair. Eventually, it consumes itself and passes. Human life is fleeting, unwaveringly, to the other world. For you, Chinitsu, you're already dead." And then we see there are multiple rooms with different people inside of them. So I'm pretty sure you probably guessed that. Maybe. That would have been somewhat of an obvious choice. It wasn't obvious for me. I wasn't expecting that. That was completely a 180 for me. Okay? Kago, I would love to talk to you, man. How? I just want to know how. Do you sit in the shower 24 hours a day just thinking of story ideas? It's not even a problem. There's no problem. The thing is, every single story I've read of this man, even from Dementia 21 and even from the little bit that I read from Super Dimensional Love Gun, they have always been something I've never expected. I swear, this man is like the king of plot twists. Keep it up. I'm enjoying it. We then cut to Oyamada and the friend talking in an office. The subject seems to be coming to terms with their own death. "Keep up the good work. Nishimaru, you've improved quite a bit," says Oyamada. Ishimaru says, looks like a new subject has already been brought in. It then proceeds to explain the whole process. And to put it simply, because this is going to be a mouthful, they take people and then put them to sleep, then put them into a room that looks exactly like theirs, but their memory is impaired, so they're not completely there, and they don't completely remember what their room looks like. And they continue their everyday, normal, daily routine just within that room. But there's a kicker. The thing is, all of these people are already dead. This man hit us with 2 plot twists in not even like 3 pages. And pretty much Oyamada's and Nishimaru's job is to make them aware that they are dead. The story then tells us about this phenomena that happens in this universe that occurred 8 years ago called the Returners. Pretty much, it's when a dead body awakens and lives life like it's completely normal. But if they're aware of their death, then they go crazy. So that's when the Restful Dead Research was founded to treat them. We then see Oyamada assigning Nishimaru to Chinitsu, and we then see that Nishimaru is the reason why everything happened to Chinitsu in the beginning of the story. The shower and the hair, she was on top of a roof. The graveyard, she was printing out photos and distorting them on a computer. And even the clock, she changed the clock to 4:44 a.m. at night. Why? I still don't know. That's still a very specific number. The way that she was also sweating, she was dripping stuff on her head at night. They then proceed to show that Chinitsu is sadly passing away. Before she ends up dying, Chinitsu says, I shouldn't have came to this room. Thank you for everything. And then the job is done. The subject becomes exhausted and accepts its death. They then pass that body on to the respectful family. After all that explained, Oyamada tells Nishimaru that that was her 5th returner that she put down. Nishimaru thinks that she overdid it a little bit with the hair, so she'll do better next time, which she didn't have to wait long because her next time is now. We then see her new subject, which is a girl with pretty much the back of her head blown out with her guts hanging out from her stomach and her arms are all cut up and stuff. Nishimaru thinks this is going to be the hardest job that she has done yet. We then also see what happened to the girl. Apparently it was an unfortunate terrorist attack and she was the only returner that didn't go crazy, you know, and she was very docile. We then see that Nishimaru tries the same things that she did with Chinitsu. The hair in the shower doesn't work because the girl can't see. Also, while she's in the shower, her eye falls out. So she really can't see. The fridge tactic also didn't work because again, she can't see. She can't hear the voicemail because her ears don't work. She tried the classmate thing. That didn't work. Waking her up at 4:44 a.m. didn't work. So she tries the chest compressions at night, but it ends badly with her pretty much puncturing her chest again, having all her guts just The subject then thinks that she is sweating, so she proceeds to take a shower with her guts hanging out everywhere. We then see that if a subject is losing control, there is a sign of hunger. The subject is hungry, and then she gets into the shower, but then she thinks that she's covered in sausage. Again, I've already read this. Take a guess what's gonna happen. You done? Okay, you're wrong, by the way. Once a returner has a taste for flesh, then it's too late. But before the subject can do anything, Nishimaru comes in and stops it. We then cut to her in the office talking to Oyamada, and they decide to pull the spiritual friend card, which didn't work. And actually, the subject asks Oyamada if she can come into the bathroom and check something with her because she feels like that she's being watched. A bit later, Nishimaru comes in and checks on the subject, and we see that the subject ate Oyamada. Soldiers are coming in and charging the place, trying to kill the subject, but Nishimaru stops them. I don't know why you would stop them. If you know that a returner eats human flesh and you see that it's too late, why in the world are you stopping them? I personally would have them kill her. She's already dead. It's not like she's gonna feel anything. She didn't feel her eye fall. She also barely has a brain. Literally half of her head has exploded. Ishimaru goes on to say, the subject is still reasonable. All she has to do is balance the rationality with the subject's ego. She then has the soldiers convinced. She goes in to try to talk to the subject. She asks, "What do you think you're doing?" The subject then says that she was hungry, so she went after the first thing that she saw. We can see that her mind is balancing out from 50-50 to there being more rationality than there is ego. And then the subject goes crazy. Ishimaru finds out that what calms her down is blood, so her only reasonable option is to take Oyamada's body and use her blood. She then starts to feed the body parts of Oyamada to the subject with stuff like rice. The subject says that she is a really good cook. Nishimaru then experiments with pork and human flesh in different ratios. The subject likes it. There's nothing like a good cooked meal. Yeah, okay. We then see three returners eating and enjoying food. We then find out that the subject is the one cooking the food from Nishimaru's body. And that's the end of the story. Great, amazing, wholesome story. So far, I'm enjoying this a lot more than Super Dimensional Love Gun. I just think the stories are better, in my opinion. And they're like less weird and more reasonable stories in general. And I like it, yeah. Okay, hello, it's literally been a whole week later, but better late than never. So let's start into the third story. Family Portrait. The story begins with a girl in a bathroom trying to brush her teeth till an old man comes and touches her in a weird and inappropriate way. The old man says, "That's my growing girl." Ew. Disgusting. But she yells at him to leave, and he leaves. That old man is always so horny and gross, her brother says. The brother then proceeds to give her his 2 cents and says, it's pretty much your fault that he's acting this way because, before you were nothing, pretty much. You had no body or anything. But then when you got into high school, you're all breast and you're all butt. So you being that way and you showing it off reenacted his drive. We then see them sitting downstairs eating breakfast. The girl, whose name is Mika, her mom says she's been oversleeping a lot lately. Mika says her clients contact her late at night. The mom then tells her dad to do something, but she gives them good advice, Mika says. She then gets a text from her friend and leaves, but before she does leave, her mom tells her, "You need to think about what you're going to do with your life." Also, her grandpa says that Sachi is filling out nicely too. This grandpa is a weirdo. We then see her outside talking to her friend, whose name is Sachi. Then a neighbor says good morning and asks how her grandfather's doing. Mika says he's as lively as ever. After everything that's happened, I'm surprised to hear that, the neighbor says. So her and her friend leaves and they go down the road. The neighbors are talking to Mika, and it honestly seems like that everybody loves her grandfather, even though she thinks he's a pervert. They're then in class starting a test that quickly ends, and then they're walking a hallway and they think that they failed the test. Sachi says if they keep failing these tests, they're gonna kick us out. We then see them at an arcade playing Taiko, which I'm absolutely amazing at. Godlike, some would say. And before I get into anything else, I will say this right now. When I was reading this did really seem like the most average Kago story I've read in a while. But that changes very soon. It's now the next day and it's the same as the day before. Old man being a pervert, they have breakfast, she meets up with her friend, they go to school, they go to the arcade, they head home. But while she's heading home, she sees police officers at her neighbor's door. She enters her home to ask her mom what's happening. Her mom says her body was missing. Then the old man grabs on her area. There's going to be a lot of that in this story, by the way. I'm sorry beforehand. The next day she's getting ready, but her grandpa didn't, attempt anything. She asked her mom if he's sleeping, but he's just downstairs eating. Mika seems a little weirded out by it. A little later, Mika asked her mom if there's anything new about the neighbors. Apparently, the cops came to the neighbor's house and tried to arrest the husband because they suspected that he is the culprit. Mika's dad apparently thinks that they buried her body somewhere. Her brother says that they did fight sometimes. While all this talking is going on, we see that the grandpa is just sitting there and slowly spills his soup. I kind of forgot to elaborate earlier. The person that was missing, yes, the other day, was the child, actually. The child was, the one that was missing. But now the mom is missing. Mika leaves the house, but Sachi is late. Apparently, she hasn't come to school that day. Mika is now riding back home till an old lady stops her. The lady's husband is also missing. Mika gets home and starts to speculate, is this just a coincidence or were they all a part of a crime? She then calls someone and it just rings. Then it's the next day. Mika's getting ready for school and was about to leave till she finds her grandpa on the ground in front of the door. She asks, what's happening and are you okay? He then stands and there seems to be a weird liquid spilling from his pants. We then get 2 panels of Mika's mother at the doctor's office saying that he has some type of syndrome that is way too long for me to even pronounce. We then cut to class. The teacher says a student has been out for 3 days. There are then 2 girls sitting behind Mika talking about whatever happened to Sachi. Later on, Mika goes to Sachi's house and talks to her mom. Her mom then explains she called for dinner one day and she wouldn't answer, so she went up to her room and saw that her room was a mess and her laptop was still open, and then she sees her clothes sitting on her chair like she just disappeared. She then leaves and comes across the neighbor that the cops accused of the disappearance of the child and his wife. But it turned out that the same thing happened to his family as well. One night, him and his wife went to sleep and their baby was just gone. They looked everywhere for it, but they couldn't find them. The same thing also happened to his wife. She was weak and couldn't eat. Then she was just gone. The man then lashes out at Miki. He thinks that she thinks that he did it. Miki tells him to stop, but he grabs her by the jacket and then Miki pushes him and then he's just gone. His clothes are just on the ground. We then cut back to the house and the grandpa is still getting worse. We see Miki's brother thinking about something, but Miki comes in and screams that she killed someone and that she's the child of the devil and she's cursed. The brother is like, why are you freaking out? I feel like anyone would be freaking out in this situation. Like, I push someone and they're just gone. Anyone, I find it a little hilarious on how normal he thinks this sounds. He then goes on to say, sis, do you not know about a counter curse? Those who cast a curse often has it reflect back to them. Even if you subconsciously use the power of this so-called curse, you have been cursed in return. He then grabs her skirt and tackles her to the ground. He says he's just checking something and then he lifts up her shirt. Forewarning, anyone that has a fear of holes, here's your warning. And her back is full of holes. Miki freaks out and her brother says, it's not that bad. The fact that he thinks that this is normal is baffling to me. Like, what's normal about this? And the fact that they're just going along with the idea that, oh, there's a curse. Yeah, that checks out. Yeah. No explanation. He then goes on to say, there are people with cursed powers, but you're not one of them. He then gives us a story of his own experience with these holes. It was only yesterday when I found out it was from Grandpa. We then see while Miki was at school, Grandpa made his foot disappear. After that, the Grandpa ran into him in the hallway, and for a moment, he forgot his grandson's name. The next day, his hand disappears while doing some questionable activities. He then decides to experiment. He asks Grandpa what his name was. It took him a bit, but then he seemed to remember his name and his hand came back. So basically, whoever Grandpa forgets disappears. Which, while I was reading this actually, I don't know if I'm misremembering it, but when I was reading Dementia 21, I think I remember there being a story about, you know, if you forget, then the person disappears. I'm actually gonna find it real quick. Okay, I can't find it, so I'm probably just misremembering or I'm just being lazy. But I feel like I remember the same concept being used in Dementia 21. I just can't find it. Yo, I found the story. It's crazy because it's literally one of the first stories. It's the 3rd chapter, pretty much. And yeah, so I was just being lazy. I read it and yeah, it's pretty much the same concept. The difference is that They don't get holes. They just explode. The brother then goes on to say that even aunties coming from the countryside says that there's been relatives who have been disappearing and have been experiencing the same issues. Miki then hears something and turns to see her mother and her father on the ground with holes in them. Then holes started to appear on Miki. She asks, what should we do? And the brother's first thought was kill him. Weirdly enough, that would be my first thought as well. If you eliminate the effect, no, that's not how it goes. If you eliminate the cause, then you eliminate the effect. Smart. So he tries to do that by hitting his head with what seems to be a box. But before he can, his hand disappears. I'm not going to show any of this because it gets very inappropriate, you know, like for YouTube. And at the end of the day, this is a high schooler, so I'm not going to show any of this. But I kid you not, one line from this whole scene goes like this. Goes like this. I'm gonna try not to laugh. You may have forgotten your grandchild's name, but you're not gonna forget this. You're not gonna forget this ass. A bunch of weird stuff happens between that, bunch of weird touching stuff between her and the grandpa, and then more weird stuff happens. I'm not gonna show any of it. The brother then goes on to say, I can show this now. The brother then goes on to say his body is reacting to the stimuli. I wonder what he means by that. That should work for her, but what about everybody else? Then, seemingly out of nowhere, everything is gone, and it's just the grandpa sitting there with clothes surrounding him. And that's the end. I have so much to say. First things first, one, why is there so much inappropriate stuff in this story? Like, again, it's not on the level of the Super Dimensional Love Gun, okay? I know I've mentioned Dimension 21 and Super Dimensional Love Gun a lot in this video, but those are the only two manga that I can go off of his work, okay? It's just uncalled for. And dare I say, I was very uncomfortable reading this story. I'll get into my thoughts about about the stories at the end of the video, but so I'm just gonna save it for now. And let's move on to the next and final story. Blood Harvest. It's 5 p.m. August 8th, 2017. We open up the story with a traffic jam, listening to someone on the radio talking about a farmer being attacked by a bear. We then see two girls in a car, and one of them is annoyed at the other girl for smoking a cigarette. The conversation then switches to the girls talking about the color of the car. The girl driving says, "Deal with it." Then the conversation switches again to them talking about a video game. The girl in white states, "We're going to be late and I wish we left an hour earlier." We then cut to 3 hours earlier and they seem to be at a beach. They're then dressed up and we're about to leave till one of them spots a place that they seemingly had to go to. The other girl doesn't really want to because the line is long, but she gets convinced anyway. They get in line, but then someone comes up and says that they skipped her in line, even though she was out of the line in the shade. The girl who wanted to wait in the line in the first place says, "If you really were here before us, then prove it." The random lady then grabs her hand, but shows her face is frightened, and then runs off and falls. We then cut back to them in the car, and the girl smoking asks whatever happened to the farmer that was attacked by a bear. She doesn't know, and then she points out the fact that there's been a large car crash. Then the radio states there has been a large car crash. 5 people are dead on the road right next to them. All of a sudden, the girl smoking is knocked out and wakes up to the girl that was with her gone. She then says, "Did you just leave me here?" She then looks around and sees that every car around her has been crushed or crashed. She then asks where's her friend and what happened. She then gets back in the car and sees her friend's body completely mutilated right next to her. She is then rushed to the hospital, and it's now August 14th, 2017. An investigator named Okayama comes in and asks the girl how she's doing. We're made very clear that this isn't his first time visiting her and asking her this question. He then explains what she told him over the past 10 days. "A week ago on August 8th, you and your friend were on a trip to the beach. You got stuck in traffic on the way home and you dozed off, and then all of a sudden you wake up to her mutilated right next to you. That's what happened, the girl said. Explain to me how that's wrong. That's why we're investigating. My job is to look at this from every possible angle, including the fact that you could be lying. I see roughly two likely scenarios. First, she was killed in the car. Second, she was already dead when you put her in the car. The first complication is that it would be impossible for you to get her in a mangled state like that without a weapon, but there was no weapon in the car. She could have also been thrown out of the car, but there wasn't any blood. Or we could consider a third option, that being your friend getting crushed while you were sleeping. He then throws an old news article on her lap from a case about a year ago that he worked on. A delivery driver was hurrying up because he was on a tight schedule, and all of a sudden he came across a car on a one-way road, stopped. He honked his horn, but when the car didn't move, he's decided to get out. When he got out to check on the car and see who was in it, he all of a sudden comes across a family of 4 burned to death, with no evidence on how it happened. He then throws more news articles at her saying last September, a couple was parked in a car and their bodies were crushed. Then, in November the same year, another family was paralyzed with ruptured organs. Then on January, an elderly couple was seemingly drowned to death in their car with no sign of water anywhere. Every case defies logic. The bodies are mangled with the car being completely intact. The girl's then wondering, why is he harassing me? He then goes on to say, because you are the only case that we have that survived one of these incidences. Her mom is with her while she's getting discharged, and then her mom asks, is it such a good idea to get rid of the car? I couldn't keep it after then she pauses, and then all of a sudden her mom smacks her on the back and says, none of that has to deal with you. It's not your fault. The detective then shows up again, and then the mom goes on to say, are you sure you know what you're doing, seeing this older man? The girl then seems a little bit embarrassed and says that what she said was gross. They're now sitting at a hospital cafeteria, and the detective explains that her daughter might be the only reason why he solves this case. The mom then says, with absolutely no hesitation by the way, sure, whatever. She's gotten herself into whatever this is, make use of her. The girl is then in a state of like, what? What? You're just gonna say that? You can't just do that. You didn't even ask me. Give me a decision. The girl then states that she doesn't know anything. Then a detective puts out a bunch of the cases around the same incident on the table. He then goes on to say that he's using private investigators and a network of people because he's the only one that believes that these cases are connected. While I was reading this, I found that very dumb. Like, there's so many of these cases and they have like the same issue. But why in the world does no one think that these are connected other than him? He then shows the mother some of the cases, but he apologizes because he thinks that they might be a bit too much for her. But again, the mom being the mom, she doesn't care, and she actually says, no, go on. At this point, I felt like that the mom was the killer because no way someone's this optimistic about it. Actually, you know what? Never mind. There are a lot of weird people out there. I'm gonna butcher these names, by the way. I just want to let that be known. He then goes on to explain that the cars that were purchased in the case were purchased used. He then proceeds to explain that a car in Yokohama was purchased a month after an incident. Someone named Odarawa, I don't know how to pronounce the name, purchased a car in October of the same year. The mirror case also took place a month after the car was purchased as well. A common denominator is that all the cars are used. He then proceeds to ask the girl if her car was also secondhand as well. He then proceeds to tell him that he checked the previous owners of all the cars. The mom then goes, no, that can't be. Are the previous owners the same? No, it's completely random, the detective says. This mom watches way too many horror movies, man. After that, the mom and the girl are walking out of the hospital, and the mom is a little annoyed with the detective and wonders what does he even want from them in the first place. The mother then proceeds to get a call from the husband saying that he's close by the hospital, so he can just ride home with them. Then they spot his car, and the girl, who we find out whose name is Hiseko, freezes. And then she looks into the car to see that her dad and her husband's body has been exploded inside of the car. Hiseko falls to the ground and all of a sudden says, "Not again." She then looks up to see that cars are falling all around her. She then sees three girls and one of them seems to have something sticking out of their neck. More cars continue to fall and all of a sudden we see that a bridge with a bunch of cars is collapsing. The cars then look like that they're fixing themselves and driving themselves off the bridge and falling into a hole. We then see Hiseko wake up and she's all of a sudden at a funeral for her dad with her mom on October 24th, 2017. The detective then shows up and Hiseko asks her mom if the car that her dad used was a used car. It was, she says. So after the funeral, Hiseko and the detective meet up. And apparently Hisoka gave him some pretty good leads. The detective still doesn't know anything that's going on and still doesn't know where the intact cars are coming from. Then out of nowhere, Hiseko says the cars are coming from there. She looks up and sees that there is a bridge with cars driving themselves off. She says we have to stop them. It is now August 30th, 2017. We see a nice plate of good-looking pancakes. And a lady with black hair is looking forward to enjoying her nice looking pancakes, right? But then out of nowhere, Hiseko comes and kidnaps her from her delicious looking pancakes. She says sorry and that she'll pay her back. We're now at a place with a bunch of cars. Hiseko and the detective are now talking to her and she goes on to say, "I already told you I don't want anything to do with this." But Hiseko elaborates that she's the only lead that they have. Somewhere in all of these cars is a car that craves human blood. And if we don't do anything about it, more people will die. The detective doesn't really believe in this type of stuff, but it's their only lead that they have, so he just goes along with it anyway. Hiseko goes on to tell the lady, "You know something about me. You ran away from me. I thought you were just another weirdo, but you noticed something about me." The lady states that she does not like this and doesn't want to be a part of this. Hiseko questions why, and then the lady goes on to say, ever since she was little, she could see certain things, and it caused her nothing but grief. "Do you see something when you look at me?" Hiseko says. The lady says no, it's more than that. She then asks Hisako for her hand and then cuts her finger and rubs blood on cars. They then come across a car, rub her blood on it, and then out of nowhere, it starts to burn and destroy itself. Her blood seemingly reveals the car's true form. The lady then explains that some of the cars do not like the type of blood that she has, and that's why Hisoka lived in the beginning of the story. She also kind of compared the cars to as vampires, and that when a car gets into a fatal accident, it doesn't forget the taste of human blood. So they return in brand new condition. The lady then goes on to say that you can't stop this with just your blood. You'll run out by then. The detective then says there has to be someone with the same type of blood as Hisoka. Then Hisoka comes up with the idea of taking a photo, but it wouldn't work because to normal people, it'll just look like a car accident. But a video might work. So they go along with the video idea and Hisako wants to try out all the cars in the junkyard. But they try to stop her, but she doesn't listen because her friend and her dad both died to the same thing. So they end up doing it, but the problem is her blood. She's gonna run out. So she does the calculations and says that a little over a liter of blood should work. She starts off with 100 milliliters. She tests the cars out by dropping a single drop of blood on each of the cars and sums up that 100 milliliters can probably get just about 80 cars. When they don't find any, they take 50 milliliters out and then they take another 50 milliliters out. She starts to get a little dizzy, but then the lady with the black hair comes and steps in. They lay her down on a park bench, but she doesn't want to stop, so she gets up but then falls. The lady then decides to help her and gets her some snacks to replenish her blood. Hisoka doesn't like liver, but the lady doesn't care because if you want to save the world, you gotta sacrifice a few things. She then thinks Hisoka is good enough to do another 100 mils, so they draw her blood and get to work. They then get down to 5 cars and then they finally find one and catch it on video. They then put the video out there and the whole world knows. Used cars around the world are now sent to landfills and are now being destroyed, but there are still people that don't really trust their cars, and the only way to test is blood. So Hisako volunteers, and over time she becomes a living blood factory. And that's why the lady with the black hair didn't want to get involved in the first place. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of none other than Brain Damage. All right. Yeah, this is the outro of the video. I forgot to do an outro earlier, and I'm just now noticing that. This manga was definitely a roller coaster that I honestly don't really know how I fully really feel about the stories all that much. Like, don't get me wrong, the stories are good. Like, they're good and unique and creative stories. While I was reading them, it was more of a fact of, am I enjoying this because they're good, or am I enjoying this because of the absurdity of the stories? And that's kind of what my mind was balancing between the whole time. And that's also part of the reason why it took this video so long to get out. Like, literally, I'm telling you this right now, this video, I started this video about almost 3 weeks ago, and I uploaded a completely different video within the span of me working on this video. And the main reason of because of that is because I just didn't know how to feel about the manga. So what are my thoughts on all of the stories here? I'll start from my least favorite to my most favorite. My least favorite is Family Portrait for very obvious reasons, as you have probably seen in the video if you've made it that far. The story begins nice. It's very average, honestly kind of tame for Kago, minus the whole grandpa situation, which is the main reason why this story is my least favorite. Then it adds into the concept of, oh, he pretty much has dementia, so if he forgets, then the person disappears, which I swear is in Dementia 21. I just can't find it, and I haven't found it yet. But then it gets to the end, and it's like her only option is to basically borderline have sex with him. That's why I couldn't show all of that. This is a high schooler. There are laws in Japan that are completely different from America, but I just wasn't expecting that. That was something I was not expecting. And that kind of dragged the story down for me. And then we get to like the actual ending of the story where everyone just disappears without a trace, and there's no like, it just feels weird, and it just feels kind of off. Kago also provided his thoughts while writing these stories and where his mind kind of was while writing these stories as well. So I'm going to read his thoughts on this. When the memory era of the brain is destroyed by dementia, what happens to the actual memories themselves? If actors and politicians are forgotten, do they also disappear? What if we forget a specific region of a country? What happens if their very existence of the earth is forgotten? Or if we forget that very concept of the planet? It's more of a philosophical question, I know, but once you start thinking about it, there is no end. Yeah, no, that doesn't give any information. I thought it was gonna get some type of information. It didn't. Never mind. You know what? That adds to my least. You know what? That just adds to it. It's definitely at the bottom now. Moving on to For Labyrinth Quartet. Now, this is a very strong start to the story, and I really like it. You know, it's nice. It starts off with four girls in a room, very basic concept, and there's a murderer going around killing them. Now, the reason why I have this above Family Portrait is one, because it has an actual ending and it has an actual explanation to the ending, which I appreciate. But it's the plot twist at the ending that really cements this story for me. Because at first, it's just a basic slasher, pretty much. But then you find out, oh, the killer is doing this because that she has a fantasy of these two characters making love, and she decides to make a comic out of dead bodies. I don't shame, but that shit is weird. Let's get into Kago's thoughts on the story. Four imprisoned women with the same face try to solve the mystery of their capture while evading the pursuit of a murderer. The ending feels a bit like an inside joke. However, I hope I properly explained the reason for gathering these women with the same faces and mysterious structures of the room. If you question whether there truly exist people with the same face, even if they have different makeup and hairstyles, well, please accept the meta excuse that is well known manga artists can only draw a few variations of female faces. In a manga with many women characters, it would be strange if they all had the same hairstyle and clothes, because then you'd realize there are only 2 or 3 different facial patterns. That's very interesting, actually. So pretty much he takes the idea of manga artists only being able to draw certain set of female faces and pretty much turns it into satire. That's pretty much what this whole story is from this explanation. And he did manage to pull off that ending. He did make it very understandable on why they were there in the first place. Moving on to number 2, we have The Cursed Room. The Cursed Room is really good. One, because I really like the characters. I managed to really like all the characters, and I felt somewhat of a small connection with all the characters in the manga, especially the first subject that Nishimaru took care of. I really liked her. I don't know why. I just did. And then we had the second subject, aka Returner, that Nishimaru took care of, and I liked her too. And the ending is funny as hell. It's a funny ending. Just the irony of it all is funny. Like the fact that Nishimaru tried to help the subject, but in return, she helped the subject, but the subject killed her while she was helping her by introducing her to human flesh, even though that is kind of backwards because her herself knows that you cannot feed a returner human flesh unless there's no return. Pun intended there. Kago's thoughts of the story is, the idea of labyrinth quartet starts with the final punchline, which makes a lot of sense because I don't understand how you can even come up with that ending without having that be the initial story plot. That made it easy to come up with the title and the story. But the cursed room was trial and error. It started in a cursed room, which is a common in ghost stories. I knew it was going to be a zombie story, but everything after that was a blank slate. That's why the plot exponentially changes the zombie genre as a modern horror with 2 films, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. Since then, an unpredicted number of zombie films have been made. It seemed like the zombie films had run out of ideas, but more and more films kept being made, and now it is an established genre. Movies, games, and manga are full of zombies, making it extremely difficult to create zombie stories these days. So he pretty much just had a hard time. Hey, I mean, I don't understand how you come up with a lot of these stories, man, but you can do better than me. I'll tell you that much. Then we move on to the last story, Blood Harvest. Now, I really enjoyed Blood Harvest for multiple reasons. One, because it's actually the best story in the entire manga, and that it has an actual, plot to it. An actual good, reasonable plot. It gives us a beginning, it gives us a middle, and it gives us an end. Unlike Family Portrait, where it kind of gives us a beginning and then it just gives us an end. Or at least that's how it felt to me. Now, I will say that some of the detective parts drag out for a while. That's why I didn't mention some of it in the video, because after just reading it all, it didn't really feel needed to be in there because you kind of understand the story anyway based off of what I give you. So yeah, it feels like the actual only structural story in here that actually has a really good plot to it. You have a girl who has a specific type of blood, and these cars that are all of a sudden vampires don't like her blood, so she survives this accident. So she's the key point of an investigation. Then it turns out that they figure out that she is pretty much the antidote that they needed to figure out if these cars are vampires. And then all of a sudden, she becomes a blood factory. That sounds reasonable to me. Anyway, let's get into Kago. In this story, it's never revealed why the main character has her particular physiology. I thought about having the main character die in a traffic accident and not realize it, but then I realized it would be the same premise as the cursed room. So I decided to force a black humor unhappy ending. I thought the story started out strong with her waking up to find a friend crushed in a passenger seat. It drags in the middle with the detective laying out with the investigation, but our 4 stories in this collection, this one leaves the most lingering questions. For example, who is the used car dealer? Also, the principle behind the resurrection of the cars is unclear. I left these things out because I think horror works better when left unexplained. Yeah, so pretty much the same thing that I said. Pretty much. I mean, it does drag in the middle of that. So I completely agree with what he says there. Happy to see that me and the author, kind of agree with like what's going on. Like, maybe me and him should write a story. I'm down for it, okay? I'm down. But yeah, brain damage. The recording of this entire video, I swear the title is not a joke. This entire video, this entire manga as well, gave me brain damage. So with that being said, I'm happy to say that this torture of recording this entire video is over. Yes, it was annoying, but it was also fun. And with that being said, goodbye and good night, because it's like almost 12 o'clock right now. It fell again.